guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm here today to do a tutorial on how I kind of make my journals, how I bind them together, just kind of using a simple kind of one signature journal. And to do that, I'm going to actually kind of use my latest kit that I've created. So I'm just going to kind of give you a bit of a run through my latest kit. As you can see, it's Beatrix Potter. I haven't quite decided yet on the name. I could be really boring and obviously just call it Beatrix Potter Kit, you know, would obviously make sense. But I'm trying to think of something a little bit more fun. So hopefully by the time that I upload this video, this kit will be actually in my Etsy shop. So I'm just going to quickly show you that. So, I mean, obviously if you're not interested in looking at the kit, then, you know, feel free to skip ahead. So basically this kit contains 22 pages. It's got 122 individual elements for cutting out. It on top of that, in addition to that, it's got one envelope, one file folder, one coin envelope, and one tag. No, that's not right, sorry, 4 tags and one tag / label thing, which I'll kind of show you when we come to it, and also has 6 background papers. So there's kind of plenty of bits and bobs to play with. So I'm just going to kind of show you roughly what's included. Obviously lots and lots of different images from Beatrix Potter kind of images, and I've worked them together with other vintage images and flowers to create obviously the kit itself. And kind of, as you can see, I've got some little sentiments here, you know, kind of all various different things. I've got some little tickets, butterflies, happy times here, more little bits here for kind of use for journaling cards and various things, little flowers again, tickets, more little elements, a little image there to just fussy cut round and pop that on a page, then more elements to use as kind of pockets and tuck spots and journaling cards, more flowers. I've tried to give you lots and lots of things to work with. I always like to have tons and tons of elements to work with if I'm doing a journal. So that's kind of the hope here. Obviously they come in kind of different sizes and shapes and things, and obviously you can always enlarge or shrink these down when you come to print them. So yeah, I've kind of just tried to include a big variety of different things. I've included kind of some of the Beatrix Potter characters and things for fussy cutting and just popping them onto a page as well. Then you've obviously got an envelope here. Again, you've got the kind of crease marks there, so you know kind of where to fold it. Then you've got the file folder here, again the crease mark here, where to fold it. Little coin envelope, again you've got the kind of crease marks there, where to fold that. This is your 4 tags. I've done them in different sizes. I tried to kind of give you blank tags because only really kind of working with the kits do you kind of then become, I guess, familiar with kind of what is fun and what's not. So, I mean, personally, I like decorating tags, so I've kind of left them plain so that you can then obviously cut out all these little bits and bobs and decorate your own tags. So although it's then, you know, part of a digital kit, your version of it will be completely unique to you because you're going to have your unique tags and things like that. So that's kind of why I've left them blank. You've just got this one with the little image here of Peter Rabbit. But I mean, obviously, again, if you didn't really like him there, you could just cover him up with something else. This was that tag label thing that I was talking about. I don't know quite what you'd call that, but one of those anyway. And again, I left that plain for decorating. And then you've got 6 background papers, which I have finally managed to print them kind of borderless, although it didn't work perfectly on every sheet. But this is one of the background papers. Then you have this one here, this one here, this one here, and then I tried to give you a couple of plain ones for you know, decorating and kind of making them your own, so that's completely plain. And then this one I was so excited about. hopefully I'm kind of getting a bit more adventurous with my kind of digital, you know, work. And so I have done this collage page, which I absolutely love how it turned out. I mean, if you watch my channel regularly, you'll know how much I love colour. So for me, this is really exciting. So really like this page. So that's the complete kit. And as I say, by the time that I upload this video, the whole kit will be available for sale in my Etsy shop. So it's, you know, quite a big kit, as I say, 22 pages. But I mean, obviously you can use it individually. You don't have to use the whole kit for a journal. You could just use odd pages or, you know, odd elements. So you wouldn't have to print the entire kit, you know, in one go. I did talk about before, I'm going to try and kind of sell some bits printed out. So I am still looking to do that. And again, hopefully by the time that this is uploaded, this video is uploaded, I may already have some physical printed out versions of things in my shop. Whether or not this will be one of them, I'm not sure, but that's something I'm kind of hopefully looking at. So that's the kit, and as you can see, I have kind of been busy cutting out elements from you know, my own kind of printed out version. So they're kind of, obviously I haven't quite finished printing them out, but just thought I would kind of bring them along and show them. In fact, I kind of pop them onto the plain side, you might be able to kind of see them a bit better. So that's some of the elements that I've been kind of cutting out, and I have been obviously inking them up and distressing them kind of as I've gone. So that's those. Having lots of fun with the cutting. So that's those. So I'm just going to move them to one side, and then we'll have a look at kind of the making of a journal itself. So first of all, we'll have a look at the papers. So I normally quite like using a kind of large A4 envelope. So I normally seal it down at one end. Sometimes I may glue it for extra kind of you know, stability, to make sure it's really glued down. Depends on kind of the stick and how good it seems. So that's kind of what I will use as my cover. And then obviously if I'm not using, you know, a digital kit and I'm using kind of paper pads and what have you, I just like to mix things up really with kind of printed, you know, patterned papers and plain papers and things. The advantage I find to the patterned papers is they tend to be a bit thicker, and you know, I mean, I love decorating my journals really quite heavily, and you know, really have a lot of embellishments and things on the page, which I find really you do need a slightly thicker paper to actually kind of endure that. So with that in mind, what I've actually done is I've printed off this kit onto kind of cardstock, which is 200 GSM. Now that's what we call it here in the UK. I noticed that people in the States call it, you know, pounds, like 200 pounds paper. So I don't know whether 200 GSM converts to 200 pound paper, I'm not quite sure. But that's what I have printed this on. It's the card that I have been using recently when I've printed any of my kits, so that all the fussy cut elements are kind of, you know, on that sort of quality paper or card. I have also experimented with 160 GSM, I think it was, cardstock, which also works really well. It's particularly good with things like my die cut elements digital kit, because obviously they're quite small elements, so sometimes kind of slightly thinner is better. So what I've done is obviously I've printed off the background papers and I've printed them back to back so that I have got some double-sided. And I did manage to do them borderless, but as you can see, I mean, this one's come out perfectly borderless. The back just has a little white strip down here, and then this one again, it just has a bit of a white strip around the edge, but on the reverse side it actually has come out perfectly borderless. So again, I mean, it's completely kind of your choice whether you would kind of trim that off or just ink the edge. this is just printed onto the 200 GSM cardstock. I haven't coffee dyed it. Again, if I had coffee dyed it before printing, it wouldn't be so apparent that this is a white edge. So I hope that kind of makes sense and I'm not kind of waffling, making no sense whatsoever. Now what I'm going to do, because I'm hoping I'm going to actually use this piece in the centre, so I'm going to actually trim this down slightly because, well, we'll come to that in a minute because otherwise, you know, I'm rambling kind of unnecessarily. So I've got my patterned papers here and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 patterned papers. Now one of those I did print on thinner paper. So this is actually on the just thick paper. Now I'm trying to remember what GSM this is. I think it was 100 and might have been 100 GSM, and I printed this off because I may have an embellishment of it on it, or I may just leave it as a kind of patterned paper. So I'm going to move that to one side. Now what I've also done is brought along some coffee dyed papers, you know, ready to use in the journal also. So that's what they are. And I've also brought along a piece of kind of card that has been coffee dyed. So I hope this is making sense. This is why I have never done this kind of tutorial before, because I find it a bit confusing to kind of describe. So this has been coffee dyed, it's cardstock, it's the 160 GSM cardstock. So I'm just going to fold it literally in half and just, you know, fold it like that. So there's that. Then I have a variety of different papers here that have all been coffee dyed. Now, when I use the plain paper, I do generally, sweeping statement here, generally like to have them coffee dyed, just because they look a bit more interesting, obviously. So that's those, like that. Now this one here, you can probably hear the crinkle. This is literally just normal copy paper, which has also been coffee dyed. So that's that. Here I have got a doily. It's just a regular paper doily, and again I've just literally folded it in half. Here I've got some vintage sheet music, which again, it's just nice to kind of include that for interest. I have another doily piece here in case we wanted to have two. I've got here an airmail envelope. I was quite lucky, I managed to pick up some of these from the charity shop recently. So I have coffee dyed that, and I thought, you know, we could possibly pop that in to the journal as well. Although I'm just having a look, and I think when I was coffee dyeing that, it seems to have actually got stuck completely down. Let's see whether I can open that. Okay, so that's opened okay. So we could include that. And then here I've just got a sheet from a vintage book, which again, it's quite nice to just include those. And then lastly, I've got here some greaseproof paper, or baking paper, perhaps you call it in the States, which again, I have just coffee dyed this, and then I've dried it in the oven and ironed it out, obviously. So what I'm going to do is just cut this down roughly so that it's kind of slightly better fit in the journal. And again, I will just kind of eyeball this like that. So hopefully that's kind of roughly the size there of the A4 sheet. Okay, and I might just take a little bit off of the edge, just so that it's not overhanging, like that. Okay. Now, so what I now am going to do is fold over my patterned papers. So again, I mean, I'm just literally folding these in half. Now this one here, as I said, I was going to trim some of this off because when all these papers slot together, the very centre will be longer jutting out than the rest. So what I might do is literally just kind of fold it like that and then take off just that little edge that you can see kind of hanging out, because otherwise it will overhang by, you know, about this amount, a couple of millimeters, you know, which is fine. But I mean, as we had that white edge anyway, it kind of is making sense to obviously cut it down. So that straight away, obviously, you've no longer got that white edge there. And again, we can obviously kind of, you know, fold that crease down. Then obviously this one. Now again, this has got slight white edge, so what we could do is cut the white edge off slightly. I mean, literally we're talking, you know, a kind of millimetre here, so it's really not going to be a big deal, you know, to cut it off. It's not going to kind of make a big difference. So like that. And again, I should have really brought my bone folder along, but I haven't. Then this one is obviously the one, no, sorry, that was, trying to work out which was the one on the thinner paper. In fact, it was this one. And this one is kind of perfect and has gone right to the borders. I think it probably depends how far in my paper is pushed into the printer. So we will now do this one. And again, this has just got a little strip of white there, so I might just literally trim that off just along the edge there. Like that. Okay. And then the last one is obviously this one, which this one has got a slightly bigger edge. So I will just take off a little bit, but I probably won't take off the entire thing, because obviously otherwise, you know, it might have taken off a little bit much. So I'm just going to kind of trim it like that. And I mean, obviously, you know, it doesn't matter anyway, because the chances are we're going to stick kind of lace and, you know, bits and bobs all around there anyway. So I'm sure it's going to be covered up one way or another. So that's that. Now, what I like to do now is obviously check the order that I want to pop things in. So obviously this is going to be my cover. So then I just take a couple of sheets here and kind of start placing them in how I like them to be. Now personally, and this is just personal choice, and you know, by no means am I trying to say that my way is right. I am, you know, not in any way kind of saying that. But what I try and aim to do is kind of have thicker pages together and then some plain pages, then thicker pages together and then plain pages. And the reason that I do that is because obviously any bulky embellishments are then next to thicker paper, if that makes sense at all. I'm hoping that that is kind of making sense. So then I'll just pop in another couple pages. And actually, just kind of having a look whether I'd like that way round, or yeah, I'm going to have it like that. So we've got those, and then we'll put in another couple of pages here. I'll just put that lined one in. Put in some greaseproof paper for interest. And then obviously some sheet music. We'll pop in the book page, which I thought, because it's got these little animals that are kind of a bit like the Beatrix Potter images, that I thought it would be kind of fun to have that like that. And we're going to have that like that, and then we'll have this here. And then I wanted to have the collaged page right in the middle because I just absolutely loved that page. So what I then do is kind of shake them all down, make sure they're all kind of lined up. Now this is what I was talking about, that when they're bunched together, we then have them kind of pushing out from the journal itself, if you see what I mean from there. So, you know, I mean, I don't mind that. I think that's kind of, you know, quite nice. But I mean, obviously, if it does bother you, you can obviously trim some of these pages down a little bit further. So then what I'll do is just flick through, because where I've kind of shaken it down, just want to make sure that my book pages and envelope and things didn't slip down too far, so that they're kind of hanging out in the wrong place, if that makes sense. So they're all kind of like that. Now then what I do is grab my envelope and place it where I want to have it in the envelope, like that. And then this is where I like to use the bulldog clips to kind of hold it in place. So this is just, you know, personally how I find easiest to kind of hold it in, like that. Because once you've kind of pierced your holes, you do not want this moving. So then what I do is I've got this kind of pokey tool thing. I just take that and kind of punch my holes. Now I like just to do three holes. So I normally start in the center, and again, I mean, I just eyeball that and I just poke that straight through the center until it obviously comes out through the envelope there, like that. Then I'll go along and do kind of just through like that at the end, and then again through this end. Oops. Sometimes it's easier than others, and obviously, like all these things, when you're doing it on camera, it's never the best, is it? So that's that. Give it a wiggle. So then what I do is take my thread, which, sorry, I did forget to mention, I just normally use this embroidery thread. I don't know what it says about it. It's 100% cotton. It doesn't really seem to say a thickness, I think. Yeah, but I mean, I've just kind of bought a variety of colours, you know, and I just kind of use that to thread it. So I thread it onto a needle and obviously double it over. And again, I don't really measure it. I just kind of have, I mean, that's probably about 80 centimetres or something when it's doubled. So I mean, actually kind of 160 centimetres if it was pulled out. And then I just thread it through, and I start in the middle hole, and then I come along to the one of the end holes. It doesn't matter which end, it's just one of them, like that. Put it through, and then through this end, like that, and then back through the middle, And what I try and do is come up the other side of the thread, if you see what I mean. So the thread is kind of then in the middle of the two sides. Hopefully that makes sense. And then I pull it tight because I want to have it, you know, nice and tight there. And then I just tie it in a knot and then around so as it's doubled like that. Now you can have a bow in there, and you know, sometimes I do have a bow, but you know, I mean, I actually quite like the strings just kind of dangling quite long actually without having a bow. And that's it. That's my journal kind of made. So then cut the needle off, and obviously, you know, I can trim this other one down as well like that. So I'm just going to do something with my needle before I leave it dangerously hanging around. Right, so that's my journal now bound. Let me move these out of the way so that they're not making all that noise on the surface there. Get rid of these bits and bobs out of the way. So as you can see, we now have it all nicely bound, you know, and it's nice and tight, ready for, you know, decorating and embellishing. I just love that centre page. So I also forgot to mention, when I brought out the threads, I do like to have a kind of few different colours, because I think it's quite fun to have different coloured threads to kind of coordinate with your journal. So obviously I've picked out this beautiful colour blue because this is a colourful kit, you know, not surprisingly, because I do love my colours. So, I mean, I just really like the blue kind of against some of the elements in the kit, that I think it just kind of picks up, you know, some of the really pretty colours in the kit itself. So that's why I've used the blue there. So that's kind of it. And then obviously you're ready to kind of start decorating your pages. Now, what I also like to do kind of as one of the first things quite often is obviously decorate or cover my inside covers. I have said before, I often don't really work on the outside cover until, you know, actually quite often the end. But what can be quite nice to do is actually cover it, particularly if you're using paper, before the journal gets, you know, too bulky, because obviously once it is bulky, you're not going to have a kind of nice flat surface to press any paper down. I hope that makes sense. So probably for this particular journal, I will probably use one of the you know, patterned papers, and probably one of the plain ones, because then I can use them portrait rather than landscape. And what I like to do is just kind of literally Mod Podge that, and I go as close to the actual inside of the spine as I possibly can, and then I will probably use the same plain one on the back, because I like them to kind of be a bit uniform normally. Again, I mean, you know, there's no rules or anything else, so it's completely entirely up to you kind of how you fancy doing it. I mean, actually that's quite a nice colour. You know, completely up to you how you fancy doing it, but you know, that's kind of just how I generally do it. Yeah, so that's kind of it really with regards to you know, securing your signatures. And then obviously kind of you get, you know, to decorate the journal, which is obviously always the fun part. So I hope that you found this tutorial useful. I'm aware that it was slightly you know, I don't know, maybe not that clear, because it's a bit hard to describe some of the things, but hopefully visually you could kind of see what was going on. So I will probably work on this journal in slow time rather than kind of do a series, but you know, never say never. So it may be that I decide to do a series with it. I'm not quite sure. But I just thought I would come on and kind of get started with it on here and do a tutorial. So I hope that you found it useful. And I hope that you like the kit. As I say, the kit's in my shop, you know, to coincide with the upload of this video. So feel free to go over and check it out on Shabby Dabby Doodah. So thanks very much for tuning in, and I hope you all have a great day. Thanks a lot. Bye.